Alright, so this is definitely the first thing you want to watch if you haven't tried to really work creative devices before, because most of them will either just passively do the same thing all game, or just not really do anything at all unless they have some kind of trigger to respond to. Like, take the item granter. If you just put one of these down, you can even like drop an item in it. Let's say a Havoc Pump shotgun, right? We got our Havoc Pump, drop it in the granter. Like, this doesn't do anything. What you need is this. You need to have this go off, and it needs a trigger. And so that would be this tab, right? But obviously you don't want the granter to just activate itself. You could take this, search up the name, attach it to the grant item function, and this would just make the granter activate itself whenever it gets activated. It's not really much of a point, right? So what we need is another device. Let's take a button. That's an easy one to use. And then the trigger for this item granter is going to be when the button gets pressed. That's when it's going to know to grant. So we'll go to events. Simple enough. And boom. So now the granter is going to go off when you hit the button. And you still have the granter set to activate itself, so you'll see what happens. Other thing with granters to watch out for is this thing. Do not ask me why this is a default setting. Set this to keep all, unless you're actually just trying to have it delete everybody's items. This granter, this is the other thing about devices. Stuff like the granter, or really just any system with event binding, is not going to care about location. You can just put the granter wherever you want, and it'll activate from anywhere, and it's invisible, as you can see. Like the granter is right here or something, but it's just not there. So let's see what happens when you click the button. As you can see, the granter activates itself every time it goes off. And we also set the button to trigger it. So that's the basics of how event binding works. Now let's make it not grant to itself. I think that would be a good idea. And what if we wanted this thing? Let's say we're gonna have all of these different triggers for it, right? As we're building our thing. And we want to be able to easily access this, like easily search for this granter when we're making our event bindings. We want to give it a name that we can remember. And the nice thing about this name is the two consonants C and G that don't normally go together. So if I were to say make it grant whenever you spawn in right here, all I have to do is type in CG and it comes up. So that's a great tip if you're on console. If you are on console though, oftentimes it's not worth naming all of your devices just because it takes so long. So I would mainly use that for the devices that are going to be used like all the time. Say a ticking system where it like goes off all the time, activating, like checking something, or a like a mutator zone covering the whole map, or just whatever. Now the other thing about setting up one of these links is that whatever trigger you have will always set off the other device that it's set to go to. So if you click this button, it will always activate this granter. But like, what if you don't want it to activate the granter, you know? And we'll get into more detail about like cooler ways to do it. But one thing that's nice is enable and disable. A lot of people when they're getting started think that these two functions will like activate something, so they might try to make the device enable and think that'll like grant the item, but basically what it does is it turns the device on or off. So if the device is disabled, it doesn't work, and if the device is enabled, it does. So that's one way to prevent the granter from always going off, is to make it disable whenever you don't want the button to be giving people this Havoc shotgun. Let's say, I don't know, maybe you want a timer, right? You could put this timer here, set it to start on game start, and then when complete, it disables the granter. Just for a simple example. And then maybe this could enable like some other item granter. I don't know what kind of game you're trying to make. I'm just trying to show you how these things work. Because you really can do these things any way you want. Another really useful trick is to have things disable themselves. What we had before was like an infinite loop with the item granter where it would activate itself. But one thing we might want to do is with the button, we can have this button transmit to itself and disable. So this button knows to disable whenever it gets activated. And that'll mean like it can only get activated once. And here's the cool thing about copying devices with event binding. If I take this button, copy it, put another one down, it will still disable itself, and it will also still trigger the Havoc granter. But here's the really cool thing. If I select both of these and copy them at the same time, it'll keep the same link between them and the button will still disable itself. So if let's say I wanted to make this a whole new kind of instance of the mechanic, right? I could add, say, a lever shotgun in here. Now this button, just by copying this mechanic over here, we have this button that gives me the Havoc and this button that gives me the lever, and I didn't have to put in any new event binding. I just had to copy this and make a new instance of the mechanic I already put down. Because even though you copied a button that links to this one, the new one isn't going to link to this one. It'll just link to the new granter you made. That might sound complicated, but as you work more with it, you'll get good with it. And it's really a great time saver if you understand it. So to recap, what we learned in this video is how to make anything activate anything, right? So we could have like we could make it start a forest fire when you jump into a dirt bike. Like I'm not kidding when I say you can have anything trigger anything. I'm actually like trying to record a YouTube video because I'm making a series on how to make creative maps. Yeah. Oh, hi. I'm like, what's up? I'm getting the feeling that some of you actually want me to do this now. Beautiful. Let's go. So this actually doesn't work if you make the zone too big. Tried making it 100 by 100 by 100. But that, as you can see, did not work out. This, on the other hand, you'd probably want to have an indestructible bike for this. But let's say you didn't always want the bike to start a forest fire. Let's say you wanted the bike to sometimes start a forest fire. Now, obviously you could just enable or disable the fire device like we were doing before with the Grancer, but maybe you wanted it to be different depending on like who got in the bike. So next video we're going to be talking about how we can do that and how you can check for like different kinds of conditions that might be different for different between players to check and see like whether something should go off and not just have everything be kind of unconditional or disable or enable for everybody at the same time. I'm also going to talk about instigators. And with this item granter, it's set to give to the triggering player, but you can also set it to give to the triggering team, or just give it to everyone, or give it to a specific team regardless of who triggered it. And so next video we're going to be talking about like how instigators work and how to manipulate those as well. See you there.